Mr.
Going live.
Tell me what to do to make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.
Hello everybody, Bob Lusk, the Pond Boss, hanging out with you this Wednesday afternoon. I don't know what it's like in your part of the country, but it's been hot here the last couple of days. Of course, I see Jason Nepstad. Jason, you must be just hanging out, ready to go, buddy. Todd Austin, hey buddy, how you doing? Good to see you. It's 91 degrees here today. I don't know what you guys have, but tomorrow it's supposed to be a high of 60. So, I don't know what I'm going to talk about tonight, so I hope you guys will feed me some questions and kind of help spread the word there. And, of course, you guys know what to do. You've been watching this show for quite a while. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine. John Wilson's on early. There's Lee Ann. Good to see you guys. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine in the comment section. Click like, share this to your timeline, your newsfeed, and you'll be eligible for a drawing for a Pond Boss hat and a Pond Boss mug. This week's winner, Craig McBride from All Aquatics. Craig's from the Dallas area. There's Frank James, John Funk. Good to see you guys. Brad Rom, greetings. You guys need to throw me some questions. I don't have any idea what I'm going to talk about, although as much as I talk, I can probably conjure up something. Of course, I got to find it here on my laptop so I can see your questions, because when they scroll across the live feed, they go by so fast, sometimes I can't see them. There's Christy Hartzell. Hi, Christy. Good to see you, girl. Let's see here. Okay, my laptop's coming up. You know what? I think I'll start off by talking about some of the things that have been happening the last few days, because our phone has been ringing quite a bit. Let's see here. I know I can find it on my laptop so I can see what you... Oh, there it is. There it is. Now I found it. Good deal. All right. Casey Wallace. What about 4-foot pond and a half acre? Is that right? Am I on the right one here? Holy cow, I'm looking at the wrong one. Yep, I'm wearing a different shirt than that one. I need to find the new one. I love technology, especially when I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, there it is now. I got it. We got 17 people watching. Sweet. All right, let's see here. I see a question popping up. I'm going to hit that first. Well, let me see here. When or what temperature should we start? When or what temperature should we be starting up the aeration? Now, right now. I like to start aeration when the water temperature hits about 55 degrees. Now, be sure you start it up properly, because if your pond is stratified at all, even over the winter, you don't want to be kicking all that stuff up from the bottom. And you know what? John Wilson just, hey man, thanks. He said the Pond Boss Resource Guide looks great. One of the things I do want to talk about tonight is, how do you know who to talk to? I'm going to answer this question first, but when you start up your aeration system in the springtime, it's really smart to start it off, run it 15 minutes today, turn it off. Run it tomorrow, 30 minutes, next day 60, next day 2 hours. Double it every day until you're going 24/7. That won't take long, but what you don't want to do is you don't want to churn up a bunch of stuff that's laying on the bottom right now, kick it to the top, and cause problems for your fish right now. So, I think that's a good idea. Let's see, I've got a copy of the resource guide right here that John's talking about. There it is right there. There's the resource guide from this year. These are free. Now, you can get a hard copy, or you can get one online at pondboss.com. One of the things, and I see Josh Flowers checking in, one of the things I think that's really, really important and smart to do is when you're trying to find information. I mean, today's world, it's like we're going to go to the University of Google and find everything we want to know. Well, while that's true to some extent, you want a deeper resource than that. While you can go find opinions, a lot of opinions, and you can go find some facts and a lot of opinions, part of your job to seek the information you need is to know where to look. And not just because I own Pond Boss. The Pond Boss website is an outstanding resource for you. The resource guide, we vet everybody that's in this resource guide. So if you want a hard copy of this, send me an email. Just send an email to info at pondboss.com. Leanne will get it, and just request a copy of the resource guide, and be sure to include your address. And if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and do that. $35 a year. Cheap deal. $35. There's the latest issue. But if you're looking for information, the Pond Boss Forum is also a great avenue for you to go find out what you need to know. in the resource guide, what I was going to say is we vet every advertiser that's in there. Now they pay to be in there, but there's some people we won't let come on because we don't agree with their philosophies, or we've seen things that we disagree with that they've done. We won't do it. So that's where I want to go on that. Look at there. There's Bill Russell checking in. Dick Talbert, how long should I run the aeration? All year long till the water temperature hits 55. When the water temperature hits 55 in the spring, start it up. When the temperature hits 55 in the fall, shut it down. That's a good time to do it. Let's see here. Lauren Larson. Debbie Dobbs, my girlfriend, lover, wife, checking in. She's going to share it to her timeline. You know what? I don't know why she hadn't won a drawing yet. Beats me. There's Carrie. Carrie Martin. We're just talking about aeration, Carrie. I'm glad you joined in. Add some things if you like. Dick Talbert, I do 2 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the evening. You know what? I like, and Jimmy Houston Outdoors just shared this. Thanks, Jimmy. Thank you. Appreciate that. And probably his bride did that too. We appreciate you guys. Matter of fact, I'd like to get up there and visit with you guys and see how your lake is doing. I bet it's doing pretty dadgum good. They're not that far from us, just about an hour north of us. On doing 2 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the evening, that's okay to start. But if you don't de-stratify your pond and you only aerate part-time, then you're not going to be helping yourself. You're not going to be helping move the water enough to create autonomy from the top to bottom. Now, I do agree there needs to be strategies like in Texas or Arizona or southern states where it gets really, really hot in the summer. I think it's wise. We tell a lot of our clients to turn the aeration system off from 9 in the morning to 9 at night, kick it back on for 12 hours just to keep that water going during the coolest time of the day, because if you run it all day long, we'll see the ambient temperature autonomous top to bottom in the mid to upper 80s, and that's too hot, even for warm water fish. Sean McNew, shad time. Yep, there we go. I'm looking sexy. Oh gosh, you better turn the phone off, dude. Christopher Aguilar, Daddy's here. You know, I don't know how this works yet because I just saw it today. It says that Facebook is judging biggest fans, and Christopher Aguilar is the top fan. Matter of fact, it says it right there on his post. Now, I don't know how in the world you did that. Maybe you're just living too much on the Pond Boss Facebook page, but we like it. Thank you. Glenn Gray, Matt Bonner. Hey, guys. Good to see you. Going back to figuring out how to learn what you need to learn. I'll tell you, I got a story to tell you. Back in 2004, I got a phone call from a guy in upstate New York. And he was a young fisheries biologist, and he says, hey, listen, I want to grow great big largemouth bass, the biggest ones we can grow in upstate New York. So I said, okay, tell me a little bit about it, because I didn't know anything about upstate New York fisheries. I didn't know anything like that. Howdy, Clayton Bounds. Yep. Oh, Christopher Aguilar, it's your Boudin post that did it. Yeah, you know what? I have to agree with that. Your Boudin post. You're rocking and rolling with that, buddy. The question was how do I grow some big fish? So I got to talking to him, and when somebody calls me on the on the Pond Boss line, hey, Stephen Barden, Nicholas Beltran, good to see you guys. And Stephen will relate to this. I had, Stephen, what I'm talking about right now is how do you choose where to get your information and then use it and believe it? Well, I was relating a story about a project that I got to work on in upstate New York, and the young biologist was over his head. I mean, there were like 500 acres of water. You know, one lake was 90 acres, two were 40. They had a 600-acre marsh with some deep water in it, you know, along with the perimeter where a ditch had been dug out. They had a bunch of hatchery ponds. They had a bunch of smaller lakes from 10 to 15 acres. And he really didn't know how to do all these things. So I said, you know what? Send me a list of your goals for each lake and some maps and some pictures. The next day, I got a FedEx package about that thick. So I started reading through it to try to see if I could figure out how to help him with that project. And I was kind of racking my brain, and he calls me again after I looked there. I called him, and he says, hey, what's the chance that you would come up here and consult? Well, I'd done almost all my work in the South. I mean, I'd done pond management projects all over Texas, parts of Oklahoma, some in Louisiana, some in Arkansas. I'd even go down over the border into Mexico and design a lake every once in a while. And I really didn't know much about northern fisheries. I was intrigued with it. especially trying to grow great big largemouth bass. So what I did was, I said, you know what? You really need to find somebody that you can believe in and then follow them. He said, well, would you come and talk to the owner and the property manager? And I said, yeah, I'd do that. You pay a consulting fee, buy an airplane ticket, I'm there. Well, about that time, Ray Scott called me. Well, the property manager had been talking to Ray about some things he could do with habitat. And of course, Ray being an iconic American and one of Field and Stream's 50 most influential men of the outdoors in the last 2 centuries, that was pretty impressive, pretty big deal. And I'd known Ray for a few years, and we were just talking back and forth. He says, I heard they called you, and you want to help them with some fish or something. I said, yeah. He said, well, they called me to help with the habitat. And I said, okay, that makes pretty good sense. And I see Barry Gann checking in. Very good to see you, man. So I started thinking about it, and I thought, what in the world can I do up there to help those guys? So as I thought about it, about that time, the biologist called me back. He said, okay, well, we're willing to buy an airplane ticket, pay a consulting fee if you'll come up. I said, okay, let's do it. Let's look at some dates. So we looked at some dates, and a couple of days later, he calls me. He says, well, here's what the property manager wants to do. He wants to invite about 15 different biologists, have a summit, bring everybody into a big conference room, and you guys just start exchanging ideas. And I said, count me out. And he said, wait. Why? I said, I'm not going to come up there and compete for your love with 15 or 20 other guys with different educational backgrounds and experiential backgrounds. He said, well, why not? I said, because what's going to happen is you will be way more confused after that than you are right now. What you need to do is you and the property manager need to get your heads together and find the guy that you think that you can believe in and hire him and follow him. Because here's the deal. Stephen Barton will tell you this. John Wilson will tell you this. Give me an amen on there, guys, if you believe what I'm about to say. Every one of us that's been in it a while knows what we're doing. We have our opinions, we have our methods, and we have our experiences, and we can help you help yourself to get what you want. But the problem is the way I do it may not be the same way Stephen does it, may not be the same way John and David Reichs does it. So what they may say will be true, what I may say will be true, but when we start looking at how, there's going to be a conflict. So I explained that to this young fisheries biologist, and he said, okay, I get it. Let me talk to the property manager. Shoot, it wasn't 30 minutes, I got a call from Ray Scott. Ray says, okay, now here you're not going to go to this summit they're going to have. I said, no, I'm not. He said, you really need to. I said, no, I'm not. I'm not going to fly to New York, waste 3 days. Thomas Smith checking in. Hey, Tommy, from the Honolulu Police Department, Honolulu, Hawaii. Good to see you, brother. Glad you're on here hanging out. And so just like what Kerry said, he says, we all have a different way of achieving the same goals. That's absolutely right. So what I told Ray was, I'm not going to go up there and try to compete with a bunch of guys to get the confidence and the love of this landowner and his property manager. He said, that makes good sense. So the next morning I get a call back, and it's the fisheries biologist. He says, okay. He says, we're in. Come up and let's talk. So I flew up there. I talked to the biologist. I talked to the property manager, the landowner, and Ray Scott. They brought in an electrofishing boat from SUNY Cobleskill and I think Finger Lakes Community College. So we got to look at some fish. But the bottom line was, what happened was they heard what I had to say and they bought into it. So that put the pressure on me to go up there and perform. But the bottom line is if you're going to manage a pond, your pond, you really need to find the resources that you can believe in. Now, when it comes to suppliers, holy cow, you just go to the Pond Boss Resource Guide. You need aeration? It's in here. You need fish food? Purina's in here. You need feeders? They're in here. You need somebody that can consult with you and help you figure out what kind of vegetation you got? It's in there. So I like having personal relationships with people that I work with so I can know their goals, so I can understand their resources, which means their pond, the water that's in it, the animals and plants that live in it, a timeline, and a budget. If we can put all that together, we can help you get where you want to go. Now, I'm in that business. So is Stephen. So is John. So is Joshua Flowers. He's on here too. I see Bruce Condello checking in. Mike Bartolini, you'll see what's happening. We're having fun, buddy. So I'm going to go back up here. Dave Weber. Dave Weber's up from north of Kansas City. Hey, Bob, took your advice from a couple of weeks ago and eliminated 3 willow trees by my pond. The question is, I have access to a 4-acre pond in northwest Missouri that is probably 50 to 60 willow trees growing on the bank. Some as big as 16 inches in diameter. Most are hanging out over the water. When I attack them with a chainsaw, any harm in just dropping them in the water and leave them there? No harm at all. Now, I'll tell you what I would do. I would cut them about 2/3 of the way to where they'll get top heavy and fall, and don't cut the rest. That'll hold them in place, and it will keep them alive longer, which means that they won't break down so fast. Now, here's the thing about, there's Linda Jennings. I bet you that's Mr. Jennings as well. Freeman, sorry. Hi, Free. Mike Collins, good to see you guys. The thing about willow trees is they suck a lot of water. A full-grown willow tree, a 16-inch diameter willow tree is huge. They don't live long. They slough a lot, but they consume, a tree that big will consume over 200 gallons of water per day that transpires through the leaves. So even a small willow tree that's 8 or 10 inches will use 100 gallons a day. So it's a wise idea to minimize those trees as much as you can. Besides, you don't get much out of them. They don't provide a lot of shade. The girl will ride along the edge of a lake. So, Dave, I'd cut them about 2/3 of the way, let them fall, leave a little bit holding on so the tree doesn't move, and it will live for a while. And when it lives, it's not going to decompose so quick. So I think that's a good thing. So let's see what else we got going on here. Don't make me think. I got to talk about these stuff. So going back to the resource, if you are looking for, when you're looking for someone to help you, if you say you want to build a lake, oh my gosh, here's a story. Good gosh, this was a long time ago. This was 15 years ago. I got to design a lake over in East Texas for the family that started 7-Eleven stores. Well, the brother-in-law of one of the family members has a bulldozer business, and he's got one bulldozer and one operator, a pickup truck, and a fuel tank. Back then it was him. He did small jobs like clearing fences, that sort of thing. These guys were wanting to build about a 40-acre lake, and the brother-in-law was pressuring for the job. So part of the reason they hired me was that so I could vet the contractors. They wouldn't have to tell him yes or no, because they had to have Thanksgiving dinner with him the next November, and they wanted me to be involved in that decision-making process. So they hired an engineering firm, which they needed because they were going to need a Corps of Engineers permit. But what they wanted me to do was to work with the engineer to help vet the contractors. So we did. And it wasn't the brother-in-law. It was a company that could get it done in 6 weeks once the trigger was ready to be pulled. They had, I think, 5 bulldozers, 6 or 7 scrapers, a track hoe, a watering truck, sheep's foot roller. They had all the equipment, everything that they needed to get on it and get it done properly and get it done quickly. So when you get ready to do a project, pick the right guy. Hey, Justin, checking in from California. Hey, Frank James, Bob, do you know when the wild threadfin shad will be available? I need 7,000 according to Justin's electrofishing survey. Well, you know what? We'll have Justin check in with you. I'll text him when I finish to let him know what's going on. Because actually, when we merged our companies, where American Sport Fish Hatchery came in with Bob Lusk Outdoors, that extracted me from the pond management stuff. So I am no longer tracking fish supplies. I'm doing this kind of thing right here. I'm marketing, I'm working with clients. I'm not managing fisheries as the pond management supplier. So what I am doing is, like, when you need fish, I'll help you get them, but I will delegate that to somebody else who does it, like Walter and Justin here, Walter Bassano and Justin Stain and Chad Fikes, as well as Sean McNulty with American Sportfish. They're the guys that are coordinating the fish. So, Walt, if you've got Justin's number, why don't you text him and copy me on it? And if you've got Walter's phone, text him as well. They'll see to it that those fish are coming at you. I see Sean Cole. He must not be playing music tonight. Got to see you there, Sean, from Lincoln, Nebraska. So there's kind of my take on suppliers and consultants. You know, I got a little story. I think I may write this down. I don't know where I'll publish it, but our daughter, Ashley, gave birth back in May to a gorgeous little baby boy, little cotton top, dishwater, blonde-headed baby boy that smiles all the time. There's Billy Wolf checking in. Perry Cook. Hey, Perry. The thing that was interesting is as her pregnancy went on, back in our day, if we wanted to learn something, especially when a daughter was pregnant, she'd go talk to her mom, and her mom would give her advice. In today's world, these young parents, they don't do that. They go to the University of Google and they start looking stuff up. They start looking up what to feed. I mean, just all the stuff that's out there is just amazing. Well, when it came time to give birth, they had everything lined up. Everything from postnatal vitamins to the lactation coach, which, okay. I know nothing about this stuff now. I stopped reproducing a long time ago. But I know this. After about 4 or 5 months of having a baby in the house, mama started getting called pretty often. When you start losing sleep and things aren't clicking like University of Google says it will, then you got to have some of that old-fashioned help. So what I'm going to tell you guys is if you have a pond, build a relationship. Call John Wilson. Call Josh Flowers. Call me. Call Stephen Barden. Call Kerry Martin. Call these guys. Check them in. They're all here on Facebook. Everyone that I just mentioned, every one of those guys be willing to help you. So get in touch with them and get that one-on-one help. It's you can go online and learn about aquatic plants. You can figure out what plant you got maybe. Then you can kind of figure out what you might need to do about it. But what you can't do sometimes is figure out what's the consequences if you're wrong. So that's why you need somebody in your court. So find you a good resource. Justin Shink from Scratch. How much does a 2-acre pond cost? Approximately any range of price? Just curious. You can ignore if I'm off topic. Now I don't have a topic. How much does it cost to build a 2-acre pond? In a perfect site for a 2-acre pond, it should cost $8,000 to $16,000 to build the perfect 2-acre pond. Depending on how much clearing, how much depth, if you got the right watershed, that's probably going to be. Kerry Martin says he's not a lactation coach. I bet you could be. Let's see, Mike Bailey. Let's see, let me go back here and make sure I answered that. But you know what? I've seen 2-acre ponds where a guy wanted to build one in rock, where they had to blast the rock, pulverize some of the rock, bring in soils to make a bed, put a liner in it. He spent $75,000 for a 2-acre pond. So if you've got a good site, figure $8,000 to $16,000 to build a 2-acre pond, depending on where you are. I mean, in California, it's going to be different. It's going to cost more because you got to have more permits. Let's see. Mike Bailey says, "Hi Bob. First time I've heard Pond Boss. My pond has gone dry and wonder what's the best way to fix it." Well, it depends on why it went dry, Mike. If it went dry because it seeps, then you got to stop the seep. If it went dry because the watershed's too small, you need to have a smaller pond. So what I would do, Mike, I don't know where you are, but if your pond is leaked dry, that's because you have leaky soils and you need to investigate the soils if that's the problem. Tori Rhodes, hello boss. Where would you recommend for me to send samples, bass samples for percentage of northern and Florida? There's 2 spots. I see Stephen Barden telling Auburn. Auburn's a great place to do that. Matter of fact, if you'll send an email to us at info@pondboss.com, I'll connect you up with that guy. We also send some to the University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point, because they've got some real good reference points over there as well. I don't know the cost difference. It's a little bit pricey, but it might be worth it. Justin Shink says, "I remember you said you built a pond in California near Napa. How big was that one, and was it hard with California regulations?" I did not build that pond. I came in and analyzed it. It's actually at the Jordan Winery in Healdsburg. You can look them up. They've got 2 nice lakes. One's 14 acres, one's about 8 or 10. They were built actually for irrigation, but John Jordan wanted to turn them into fishing lakes. That's what I helped him do. And they were on a pretty good track, but they wanted me to come in and help figure out if they were on the right track, if they needed to change things, and that's what I did with them. So I don't know, because that lake, I haven't gone back and looked at it on Google Earth, but it's probably 25 years old. So there's some things going on out there that I don't know about, and the pond management people in California will know that. Justin says, "Love this month's issue, by the way. Thanks." Here it is right here. If you guys have not seen Pond Boss magazine, it's $35 a year. It's It's well worth the dollars, I'm telling you. I can't tell you how many times somebody will tell me they just got, even if they just get one nugget out of each one, you save more money than what you spend if you've got a pond and you're working on it for that $35 a year for Pond Boss. So I'm going to encourage you to subscribe to the magazine. You can do it online at pondboss.com, or you can call the office at 800-687-6075, or you can call the office at 903-564-6144. Good job, Jake Carroll. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine. End of the comments section. Click like. Share this video to your timeline right now. Makes you eligible for a hat. Pond Boss hat. And a Pond Boss mug. This week's winner is Craig McBride with All Aquatics out of Dallas area, Texas. Okay, Mike Bailey says, yes, Bob, it is leak dry. I have several trees that are growing by the dam area. The dams may be a problem, or they may be a symptom of the problem. I think you need to get, I don't know where you are, but you ought to get a dirt guy that knows how to build ponds, that's done it for quite a while, out there to take a look at it with you and can probably figure it out. If the pond's new, it's got to be soils. If it's old, there's another reason for it. John Merle, hi Bob, I have a 1 acre pond in South Louisiana with a healthy population of bass and copper-nosed bluegill. Last year we installed 4 bottom aerators. This year, for the first time in 25 years I've owned the pond, we had a serious outbreak of, let me see if I can expand this and look at it, duckweed and blue-green algae. A hard rain last week flushed most of the duckweed and the blue-green algae out the natural spillway, but we still have a lot of subsurface filamentous algae. What's the best way to eliminate the filamentous algae? I tell you what I would do there is I think I would use this time of year a chelated copper algicide and keep those diffusers going 24/7 until it gets hot. That filamentous algae, its nature is to grow this time of year, and then when your water hits the upper 70s, it'll probably go away. I would expect it to go away. But I would use a chelated copper algicide. Matter of fact, go to pondboss.com, look in the resource guide. There's several guys in Louisiana that can help you. There's David Hardesty and Ken Rust. Those 2 guys are in Louisiana. They can help you with that. Resource guide can help you too. Find some people. Let's see. Mike Bailey. Okay, we already answered that. Let's see here. Carrie Martin, 5 gallon per treatment acres. I guess you're talking about algicide. So, and it depends on what you want to use. There's Q-Trine, there's KT, there's a number of brands, but be sure you use a chelated copper sulfate, chelated copper product. All right. Carrie Martin says yes. So now, since we're talking a little bit about aquatic plants, I've talked about this a little bit before, but let me kind of drill down into it. You know, we had one whole show on aquatic plants, but the big deal here is that you want to know the plants you're dealing with. Like Mike Bailey, okay, see, we were just talking about South Louisiana, filamentous algae. If you know that's filamentous algae, here's my caveat to that question, by the way. Be sure you know that's algae, because if you use an algicide on bushy pondweed, you're going to make the bushy pondweed grow more because you're going to kill the algae that's attacking it or attaching to it. So be sure before you treat that algae that there's not another plant in there, because the algicide works on, drumroll please, algae. If you've got another plant with it and you take the algae out, that other plant's going to grow more. So be sure that you know the plants before you start to treat them. Mike Bailey's Leaky Ponds in Northwest Arkansas, very rocky soil. Thanks. I'm glad to see me alive. I'm glad to be alive. So I would be looking at that. Chances are high in your rocky soils that you've got seepage because of your soils. I know Northwest Arkansas pretty good. Let's see what Leon Scheibel's got to say after I lubricate my tonsils a little bit. I live in northern Wisconsin. I found a little lake on county land that is remote. On it I find massive bluegills, but the bass growth seems stunted. What could I do? That's why you have big bluegill. When you've got stunted bass, especially in a northern pond, they're the ones that are feeding on the young of your bluegill so the existing bluegill can get bigger. Now, if you want those bass to grow a little bit and you've got those huge bass, chances are really high that the bass are old. Old in that part of the planet means 8 to 10 years old. Bluegills in Wisconsin can live to be about 8 to 10 years. And so if you've got really big bluegills, it's because of those stunted bass. The stunted bass have kept reproduction at bay, which allows more bluegills to get bigger. So if you start monkeying with the bass and start culling some of those so more bass can grow, then you're going to see a shift in your bluegill population. And if you're okay with that, change it. But if you're not, man, I tell you, Mike Otto, I love that guy. I was out with him 4 or 5 years ago. We were driving around, and he said, let me go show you where I've just built a pond. We went and built a pond. The first thing I saw pulling into the gate were these giant piles of brush and trees that he had pushed over. And I bet you on that 15 acres of land, there were 15 huge piles of trees piled up, ready to burn. I said, okay, I don't follow that. What's going on? He said, well, this guy bought this property covered in trees, and he wanted to turn it into a park and build a pond. So we bulldozed the trees. I said, you got to be kidding me. He says, no, you're going to love this. He says, I was at a 50-acre place about 6 months ago where the guy bought a big cattle ranch with a bunch of coastal hay meadows, and he wanted us to plant about 40 trees per acre. So we planted a bunch of trees. He says, people, if you want a park, buy a park. If you want a forest, buy a forest. You know, the point I'm making there, Leon, is I don't know that I would mess with that little pond. If it's got massive bluegills and that's what it does, that's what it is, I would enjoy that and go find another pond. I mean, there's how many in Wisconsin are there? There's a lot. But here's the bottom line. If you want to change it, the way you change it is you start culling some of those bass. And I don't know how big the pond is. What'd you say? A little lake. I don't know what that means there. It could be, a little lake might be 100 acres. But the way to change that is to start culling bass. So if you've got your own private waters and you want your bass to grow and you got big bluegills, then you got to cull some bass. Let's see here. Jason Nepstad's asking, what happens with bass spawn when the water temperature goes from 55 to 70 in a week? Will they continue to spawn even if the water temps hit 80 in one more week? Yes, they will. They're going to spawn in phases of the full moon. You know, it's the lower temperature that stops them. The higher temperature really doesn't. What stops bass from spawning is they run out of eggs. You know, they'll spawn again in 80 degrees. They'll spawn again in 82 degrees if they have eggs that are developing. Now what can happen that I've seen on a number of occasions, you see this more on a fish hatchery than you do in more like sport fishing ponds, is if the water's too warm, the eggs develop too fast, and you have some deformities in the fish. You usually see it reflected in their spines. You'll see a bass looks great till it gets back here and it's kind of cockeyed. I've seen that happen in hatcheries quite a bit when the water got too hot too quick. Oh, Lord, Christopher's throwing it at us again. I love listening to this show while I fish. I love doing this show while you fish, dog. I never did see those pictures that you said you had. Wait. Yeah, you had a little bluegill or something one time. Show something off here. Put it up. Jamie Bell, hey, Bob, new to Pond Boss, thanks to Jake Carroll. And thank you, Jake Carroll. And loving the episodes. I have a small pond that's overrun with small mudcats, bullheads. What can I do or what game fish can I put in to knock the numbers down? Well, Jamie, I'm not sure where you are. See Ashton Chandler. Hey, Ashton, how's those grandbabies doing? How are you doing? So what I would do there is especially if you're in the South, if you can, let's see, you're not saying how big the pond is, but there's several strategies about bullheads. The fastest, easiest one is to eradicate all the fish and start over. Most of the time, people don't want to do that, and I don't blame them, because if the large numbers of small bullheads are the problem, you can rectify that by stocking some 12 to 14-inch largemouth bass, and it'll eat them. Because if you had many bass in there, you wouldn't have that many bullheads. The bass would eat them. So you put a predator fish in there that will thin their numbers out. Now, that might take 18 months to 2.5 years. If that's okay with you, that's okay with me. I would also stock some bluegills if it does have any bluegills in it. Those bluegills can reproduce and compete with young bullheads as well. Now, they're not likely to eat some. Bluegill can eat some, but their mouths are too little. Bullheads grow too fast to catch up with them. Leon Schauble, 4 acres, probably a rough guess. If you want to change the bass fishery in there to make those bass grow, you could take out about 60 to 80 of the bass that are 12 inches and under, 12 inches and smaller, and that will start to change the dynamics. Weigh and measure those bass that you take out. Compare those to standard lengths and weights, and I'm kind of debating. Now I'm going to say anyway. A 10-inch bass should weigh 10 ounces. 12-inch bass should weigh 12. 14-inch bass, 1 pound, 7 ounces. 16-inch bass, 2 1/4. 18-inch bass, 3 1/4. If you can put that on an XY graph, you'll see a curve that goes just like that. And you can compare your bass to that standard curve and then decide whether you need to cull them or not. Because odds are high that those bass in that 4-acre lake in Wisconsin are underweight. And if they are, start taking some out until the remaining ones start to grow. Now, here's your caveat. All those bass in that pond are probably ancient. So the odds of them growing very large are low. So you're going to have to cull enough of them so that the newly hatched bass will stand a chance to grow. Now, here's where the dynamics get a little tricky. In a pond where the bluegill are so big like that, guess what they like to eat? Baby bass. So in order to get those bass to grow, you got to cull some of the old ones and have them replaced by young ones. Now you can either do that by natural reproduction, if the bluegill allow it, and the bass will do it, which bass are pretty good about that, or you can stock some. And if you stock some, stock them big enough that the bluegills can't eat them. Let's see here. Jonathan Webb checking in from vacation. You're going to take you're on vacation. You're checking in from vacation to check. You know what? I would too, man. If I were talking on vacation, I'd listen. Wait, I need to lubricate my tonsils again. Checking in from vacation in Naples. Naples, Florida? The fishing is a lot different than back home in Indiana. Love the resource guide, thanks. Sound like Jonathan's in Italy. Man, send pictures. I'm jealous. Christopher Aguilar, so it won't give an option to post a picture. Well, who knew that? I guess while I'm doing live stuff, I don't ever pay attention to stuff like that. Well, I'm glad to at least know you're trying to post a picture. All right, what else can we talk about? What else? What's on your mind? Give me something. Here, I'm going to scroll back through and make sure I didn't miss something here. We talked about the filamentous algae. Let's see here. What else we got? I'm scrolling. All right, give me some more questions. Let me see, what else can I talk about? Maybe I got a story in here somewhere. You know what? I got a phone call last week. Actually, no, it wasn't a phone call. Right up the road here, we got a little country store. I live out in the country near Lake Texoma on 12 acres. We have this little bitty store, the Sandusky store. Just a little gas station, convenience store with a grill, make great breakfast sandwiches and hamburgers and stuff. I was up there, I don't know, last Thursday or Friday, fueling up my truck and went in to get a soda pop, get a Diet Coke, Diet Dr. Pepper. And as I was checking out, I saw this couple standing in line, and they had on a Pond Boss shirt. And the guy says, "What's Pond Boss?" So I said, "Well, when you check out, come outside and I'll show you. In my truck, I've got some magazines." I gave him a copy of the magazine. And as we were in line, I said, "You know what Pond Boss does is we supply information to people that have private ponds and lakes." He said, "Well, when we get outside, I got a question for you." So we went outside and just started talking. And he and his wife, you could tell they were visibly a little bit emotional about this, but they had just bought, they're semi-retired. So they bought a second home just a few miles up the road here near Lake Texoma. I live between Sherman and Gainesville, Texas, near Lake Texoma. And they bought this place for weekends and to retire in later when they get ready to retire fully. So what they wanted to do, they got like 7 or 8 acres, and they wanted to build a pond right next to their house from the porch where they could see the water. So they started contacting earth movers online, found a guy that they talked to 4 or 5 of them. One guy was a lot less expensive than the rest. And so they hired him to come out. He came out on a Friday afternoon. A big bulldozer showed up from a rental truck. And he spent all day Saturday, all day Sunday moving dirt, sculpting out this pond. And then they paid him at the end of the day on Friday, and he left. And so their problem was they couldn't see the water because he left a lot of clay moguls looking type stuff. I went out and looked at it with him, and it was unfinished. He didn't dress it up. There was no topsoil on top of the clay. Nothing would grow on it. And they couldn't see the water because he mounted up a bunch of clay in a berm between their porch and the pond. And the number one thing he wanted was to be able to see the water from the porch. The second thing he wanted was to grow some golden shiners for bait because he loves to crappie fish Lake Texoma in the spring. And the main thing she wanted was to landscape the pond with some pretty plants and some benches and rocks and stuff like that. And it just didn't look good to him. So when I got there and looked, sure enough, what had happened was the guy just didn't finish. The backside slope of the dam was about 2-to-1 because he pushed the dirt up and just let it roll over. Wasn't compacted properly. You could see where water had been seeping through part of the dam at ground level, so he didn't core it. The clay was good. The clay was perfect for that, but it just wasn't built right. And so as I started pointing these things out to him, they said, well, what we found out at the end of the day Sunday when he was loading up and the truck came to pick up the bulldozer on a Sunday was that he works full-time for a big excavating company, and he did this as a side job where he could make a little bit of extra spending money. Well, the lesson was they took the cheap guy that didn't own any equipment, really didn't know how to do it, but they did it because they shopped the price. What I'm going to tell you, don't shop the price. Just like Mike Collins is saying, you get what you pay for most of the time. He's exactly right. And they got what they paid for. Hey, Scott Hohensee, one of our great friends from Purina. Purina is a sponsor of this show, and we love their Aquamax products. And I tell you, one of my favorite things about Purina is that they do the research before they ever put the feed on the market. I don't care what the product is. I don't care what they're feeding. They figure out the nutritional needs for that animal. And they develop feeds to feed to animals that they feed to other animals in the zoo. So, these guys have got it going on. And Aquamax products, that's what you want to use to grow your sport fish or your catfish. They have a good lineup of products. 30 years ago, there were no lineups of products. You could go buy catfish chow. That was it. Now they've got products for bluegill, hybrid stripers, feed train largemouth bass, little fish, medium-sized fish, big fish. And if you need help with that, email me or call me and let me know, and I'll share it with you. Let's see. And here's the way this ended for this couple. There's several good local earth-moving contractors that between jobs are happy to come out and do this job for them. So I put them in touch with a couple of guys who came out and looked at it. They saw the same thing I did. It just was incomplete. So they needed to come in when the pond is low in the summer, compact soils, make sure it's lined with clay, feather the dam down, get the dam down, create a backside slope so they can vegetate it and mow it. They wanted to put a 5-to-1 slope on the back, and they had the dirt to do it. It would just mount it up, look like the Great Pyramids in northwest Grayson County. So wrapping that up, finishing it up, is going to get them what they want, but they're going to wait till the middle of the summer when they picked a guy. It's going to cost them $4,500 to do the dirt work, buy 6 loads of topsoil to put on top when the project's finished, and then to seed it with Bermuda grass and then water it in to get it growing. Then they're going to have a lawn and a pond that's just a little bit higher than ground level, but they can see the water from their porch. So they didn't know what they didn't know, and they didn't know what they were paying for, and they're going to pay more to finish it than they did to get it unfinished. But they were stuck. It would have cost just as much to fill it in. So they just said, yeah, that's what we want to do. Let's see here. Mike Bailey just checked to see if you are on YouTube and can hardly wait to watch your videos. Can you tell us about yourself and where you're from? Well, Mike Bailey, this is my 40th year as a fisheries biologist. I knew when I was 14 years old, I was going to make a living messing with fish. I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas. Went and got a degree in fisheries from Texas A&M, which is another story around the campfire with a beer one of these days. And I graduated in December of 1979 and went into the fisheries business at that point. There was no such thing as a pond management business. I leased a fish farm, raised catfish and freshwater shrimp, and then that 1980s when the state of Texas stopped giving away free fish to stock in ponds. So I had an opportunity with Gary Valentine, who was a state biologist back then with the Soil Conservation Service out of Temple, and he started setting up fish deliveries around the state, and I got to participate in that. So I kind of got hooked on the pond management thing, even though there wasn't a pond management industry way back in the 80s. And by about 1985, that became my full-time want-to job. Now, one thing I've done is I've zeroed in the last 25 years or so on designing premier fishing lakes. That's my favorite thing to do. I love to meet an excited landowner and coach them through how to build the perfect pond or the perfect fishing lake for that site based on their goals, their budget, and their timeline. But I'm a fisheries biologist. I can tell you pretty much anything you want to know about most of the freshwater species of fish. I'm not bragging, I'm just telling you. If you want to know about fish, I can talk to you about fish. You want to know about plants, I can tell you most of the stuff about plants. I don't like aquatic plant management, so I don't deal with herbicides anymore. There's guys that have worked for me that now work for American Sport Fish. When they bought out my pond management side, they do that. So in 1992, Pond Boss Magazine was started. In 1995, I took it over. Or I didn't take it over. I bought in with several other guys. Then in 2004, I took it over as the editor and publisher. So I get to go out and do these things and then write about it. I was in an electrofishing boat all day Saturday, shocking up bass up to 10 or 11 pounds. It was really fun. So that's what I do, and I travel the nation doing that. Jason Nepstad, and you know what? And I'm in business, and I do want more business, but we also have the Pond Boss Resource Guide, where we've got some really qualified people in our network. So if it has anything to do with pond management, I can help you with that. I can guide you in a direction and get you the right people to help you with that. That's what I do. Thanks for asking. You thought you might be Chris Blood for a minute. That's what he'd be asking. Jason Nepstad, we're planning to order 2,000 F1s. Any idea on how many may survive in our established lake? Well, since you drew that lake way down, and I don't know how many fish you got out because I never heard that. There's Fred Bingaman checking in. Hey, Fred, good to see you, brother. Val Willis. Hey, Val. Love you, honey. Glad you're checking in. Sweet to see you there. I think 2,000 F1s stocked into that lake, I think your survival rates will be pretty high. Because once the lake is drawn down, and you got to tell me, I don't know how long the lake was down. You know, your lake's 125 acres. So when it's drawn down, and you guys did get some fish out, when that thing fills back up, fish are going to spawn like crazy, and reproduction is going to be good, and survival rates are going to be good for a while. You know, and that's just what's going to happen. Let's see here. I'm thinking about, let's see, Jason says, I'm thinking about building a gated area to keep them in, but I wouldn't know what to feed them. I wouldn't do that. I'd turn them loose. I think if you turn them loose on their own, and you know what, even if your survival rate is 50%, that's going to be it's going to be the 1,000 most aggressive fish. And that's going to add what? 120, that's going to add 10 fish per acre. Pretty close. And if those 10 grow up, you're way better than you were day before yesterday. So I do that. Dave Weber, there is nobody in the country that is better. Holy cow, my head's swelling up. Hey, there's Daniel Powell checking in from North Cackalack. Daniel hadn't been able to come with us live in a while. Jason, 6 weeks. Did you order your fish from American Sport Fish? If you didn't, you ought to let them compare out of Montgomery, Alabama, because they can air freight the fish too. Craig Guffin, minnows are in my new pond, planning to put fingerlings in the fall. Should I be concerned about feeding the fingerlings before next spring? Fingerling what? I'm going to assume when you say that you put minnows in, that you put fathead minnows, bluegill, and whatever other forage fish. If I'm assuming that's what that is, and then I'm also going to assume the fingerlings are going to be largemouth bass. If you stock those in the fall, you won't need to feed them at all from the fall. Now, the fish that you've got in there now, I'm going to encourage you to feed them because they're going to be the base of the food chain that these bass are going to be consuming when you stock them. So feed them now, and by the time you get to when the water temperature hits the low 50s in the fall, then you cut the feed off. The bass are going to grow fine. I don't know where you are, what part of the planet, but if you stock bass in mid to late October, somewhere through there, they're going to gain a lot of weight fast going into the winter, and then they're going to have a lot of bait fish going into the winter. So I don't know that you need to. I don't know that you need to feed them before next spring, if we're talking about the fish that you're stocking in the fall. Jason, yes, I'll be ordering from American Sport Fish Hatchery when they are ready and more next spring. Okay, that's a good move. I think you got a good strategy. I think that's going to work for you. All right, let me see here. What other stories do I have? Let's see. Oh, I got one. I had a guy call me from, he lives in Dallas. Okay, Craig's in Sedalia, Missouri. Well, you're going to have winter, so no, you don't need to feed those fish over the winter. They're going to do fine. Get them from a good, reputable source, not far from you, and they're going to do fine. So don't worry about feeding them next fall. I'm assuming you're talking about bass. So if that's the case, I don't think you need to worry about feeding them over the winter. But I would sure feed those bait fish right now. Make sure you have bluegills, fathead minnows. Make sure of that. When you say minnows, just be sure. Let's see here. Christopher Aguilar, anybody got a secret way to put posts in the water for a dock? I do. I'll tell you that secret in a minute if you can listen while you're fishing. The guy in Oklahoma, he's got a site where he wants to build about a 14-acre lake, but he doesn't really know the process. So I went and met with him, drove around the ranch, and started explaining to him, for anybody getting ready to build a pond, whether it's now or 10 years from now, I think it's real important that you learn that process. And don't just depend on a contractor to do it. Contractors, that's what they do. They build things, but that doesn't mean they know how to build what you want. And it also doesn't mean you can convey to that builder what you want. Like this semi-retired couple I was just talking about, I don't think they understand. Matter of fact, I know they didn't know what they didn't know. They didn't know how to convey the information to the bulldozer guy. And of course, when he left and it wasn't finished, they made a couple of big mistakes. One was hiring a guy for the lowest price and paying him before he was finished. Because after that, he would not return their phone calls. They left voicemail after voicemail. That's when they figured out that he worked for somebody else, and had rented the equipment. So there was a number of little red flags that they didn't see because they don't understand the process. But if you're going to think about building a pond, you need to know the process. And the process is to learn the watershed. And you need to know this for your pond right now. How big is your watershed? How many acres of runoff feed your pond, Christopher Aguilar? Do you have 30 acres feeding that? And of course, you're in flat country, so water backs up on top of you. So you're a little different. But in Sedalia, Missouri or Northwest Arkansas, where the Leaky Pond is, you need to know how big your watershed is. The second thing you need to know is what kind of soils do you have. If you don't have the right kind of soils, your pond's going to leak. That's what's happening to our friend up in Northwest Arkansas. I had a phone call from a guy in Northeast Arkansas today. Same thing. He's north of Cabot, and I'll be dadgum if he's built his pond in rocky soils. There's Tuesday Tucker checking in from the Caribbean, the British Virgin Islands where she lives now. Good to see you, Tuesday. How do you do the family? Let's see. Mike Collins, references and visit past products. That is outstanding advice. When you get ready to build a pond and you're shopping for contractors, ask for references. You know what Mike Otto told me? You guys are going to love this. Mike says the advice he gives a landowner before they pick a contractor, find out who repairs his equipment and go ask him if he pays his bills. Good, reputable people pay their bills. He kind of said that tongue-in-cheek, but I buy into it. References and go see what they've done. The guy that I went to visit in Oklahoma, he's picked out a contractor. But from the little bit of work that I've seen, he was bulldozing around what he thinks is the perimeter of the lake. I don't want any soils disturbed except where they have to be disturbed until we get into the project to make that decision. If he's knocking down trees that are going to be 8 feet above the water line, that's a bad choice. We want to leave those trees most likely. At least once he knocks it over, you can't unknock it over. It's done. So there's some due diligence to be done. Visiting, and I'm going to call this contractor and go see what he's done in the past. And he's been there, 15, 20 years. He's got to be pretty good, but I want to go see what he's done. So that's good advice. Christopher Aguilar, 7 acres feeding 2.5. Well, in South Louisiana, that works great. 7 acres feeding a 2.5 acre lake in an area that rains 70 to 80 inches a year and has a hurricane about every 5 years, that's about right. Now, if we were in North Texas for a 2.5 acre lake, we're going to need more like 20 acres of runoff. You get in western Oklahoma, you're going to need more like 60 or 70 acres to service a 2.5 acre pond, and you want those slopes to be 3 to 1 going down to about 20 feet deep. And Christopher's Pond doesn't need to be any deeper than about 10 or 12 feet. It ain't going to go dry. So when you're in more arid areas, knowing the size of the watershed, understanding your soil types, that's the things you got to think about before you get ready to build a lake. With 7:25, and I think we've kind of reached a pretty good stopping point. I'm really glad everybody's joined us. Thanks. Remember, Pond Boss Magazine, $35 a year. Debbie and I are going to go to dinner Friday night in Houston. We're going to spend $50. It'll be gone the next day. This lives with you for a year. And it also fuels the economy, so we can also afford to be doing these broadcasts as well. Jerry Stein. How you doing, Pond Boss? I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. We're wrapping it up. Remember, hashtag Pond Boss Magazine. Click like. Share to your timeline. You're eligible for a drawing. I didn't see Craig McBride check in, but he is the winner of a Pond Boss hat and a Pond Boss mug that knows how to keep hot things hot and cold things cold. So until next Wednesday, I'm going to check out and bid you farewell, say adios. And if you have questions, email me at boblusk@outlook.com or info@pondboss.com. Jason says, best show on the internet. Thanks for the compliment. I'll take it. We will see you guys next Wednesday from wherever I am, probably right here. Adios. Thanks for joining us.